Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Kevin, and I'm joined by Wendell the Wise from Level 1 Techs. How are you, Wendell?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. You have coffee now. Is that going to keep you energized?
I'm I'm going to have so much coffee that it's going to be like I'm running at 100 miles an hour. So it's going to get real interesting in about 4 more minutes
Okay,
because I've been
that's
sucking
good.
on this coffee for like 30 minutes, or not really, but like feels like 30. It's really more like 8.
All right, all good. So, a big controversy right now, I wanted to get into this straight away, jump straight into it, is the Nvidia GPP. So if you don't understand or you haven't heard about it, it's Nvidia's new GeForce Partner Program. Hard OCP dropped this article written by Kyle Bennett, very well written. And now both Hardware Unbox, Tim over at Hardware Unbox has covered it, and Steve at Gamers Nexus, and a lot of you guys are asking for my input on it. You're also asking for Wendell's input, so we thought, hey, let's just do a stream and we can both talk about it together. So at its core, I'll try get through it because this is quite a big article, and some of you guys may still be confused. At its core, Nvidia's basically setting up a program in which you different AIBs, add-in board partners, will be able to join this program, and they will see certain benefits as being sort of like GeForce aligned. You know, they say things like being invited to technical launch parties. You see there in the middle of the screen there, high effort engineering engagements, early tech engagement, launch partner status, game bundling, sales rebates programs, social media, PR support, marketing reports, marketing development funds. And so you think that sounds pretty standard, doesn't it? You know, they're just making a program to bring them all under the same umbrella. They're saying it's for better transparency. Apparently, that's what was written in their blog post. Better transparency, and also they are saying that this is like a quality assurance type thing. That if a company is in their GPP, that it's sort of like an assurance for you, the consumer, that this is a good GeForce product. You know, you're not buying something dodgy. However, this has a lot of sketchiness to it, as far as my understanding goes, because Nvidia is saying that your gaming brand needs to be exclusively aligned with GeForce. And the example they used in the article was that take Asus for example, with their ROG lineup, their Republic of Gamers brand, which they use, as many of you guys know, on their graphics cards for both Nvidia and AMD. They have ROG RX 580s, for example, and other ones. Basically, if they entered into this program, Nvidia would then turn around and say, well, you cannot have ROG AMD graphics cards anymore. It's only for GeForce because your gaming brands need to be aligned with GeForce. So this is tantamount to Nvidia kind of taking over. And the other thing is that even though they say it's voluntary that the companies can go in, a lot of people behind the scenes are worried that if companies do not sign up for this, then they may miss out on allocations and things like that. Now, that is not confirmed. That is just speculation. Okay, I just want to make sure of that. But they're saying they may miss out on things. Nvidia may favor the companies that are within the GPP, and maybe cast out those that are not within it. So, what do you think, Wendell? Have I summed it up right? Did I miss anything? Is that pretty much it?
I haven't seen any. That sounds like what has been said on the internet. I haven't
Hmm.
seen any concrete details because I know that Nvidia also posted their thing, which sounded pretty standard. Like I would raise an eyebrow at the whole. You mean I can't market a graphics card as a gaming graphics card? That seems egregious.
Yeah.
I could see that maybe they have that they would insist on your internal team. Like if you were an Asus and you have an internal team that works with you on your cards, I could see a requirement in this program to be, hey, if we're going to give you advanced knowledge and advanced warning of our graphics cards, we want to be sure that those engineers are sequestered and have a separate non-disclosure agreement from the rest of your organization, so that the engineers that are working on those graphics cards don't accidentally or intentionally leak information to our competitors, because we understand you work with our competitors and blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty standard thing. I mean, it's kind of funny because like you look at somebody like Apple, and Apple makes competitors work together basically. So like you have like Intel and Qualcomm, and it's like, no, you guys have to both give us a radio that we can use in our iPhones that is the same in every way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a funny but different story. But here is the situation where it's like it seems like Nvidia is dictating terms, because they're sort of the big fish in the pond. And I think to get to the bottom, I think there's enough here that there probably should be discovery, there probably should be depositions, there probably should be subpoenas. At least those are some of the mechanical pieces of the American legal system. And those are just information gathering things. Nobody's accusing anybody of anything yet. But let's just go ahead and get some brass tacks subpoenas. Let's get some depositions from some of the people involved with these programs, and just get it on the record as to what is going on, just so that we're comfortable with that. And I think that would be a good next step if we're interested in consumer protection.
Yeah. So, what do you think of Nvidia in their blog said that this was about transparency, or that there was going to be lots of transparency to do with this? What do you make of that claim? Because I, for one, don't. I feel like they're throwing that word out there, like thinking it sounds good, but they don't actually know. They haven't really decided on what it actually applies to.
What are they being transparent about exactly? Is it that they want to be transparent to the consumer, or do they want to be transparent as to what their expectations are, and the expectations themselves are a bit onerous? What I don't. It's not the language. The language that was like Kyle Bennett's article is amazing,
Yeah.
and I would say that he is like sitting on some amazing stuff that has not been made public yet. Just guessing.
Yeah.
But I would think that there's a component here that is we're going to craft this agreement so that the language is pretty loose. It's basically okay under the American, it maybe would be frowned upon, but basically okay under at least American law. But the language is loose enough that we can sort of lean on partners one way or the other, because it's the meetings, it's the restaurants, it's the dinner with the executives where it's like, hey, I should do this, or hey, I should do that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so a little different situation in terms of like what the paper says versus what you're actually expected to do. And I don't know, like in America, apparently these kinds of things are okay. I think the European Union would be much more likely to really dig into it and figure out if there is wrongdoing here or not.
Well, that's
At
a
least
good
historically.
point. Yeah, well, that's a good point. I forgot, guys, I'm so disorganized all the time. I forgot to grab my laptop, so I can't read the chat right now because I only have this single monitor, so I'll go grab that. But while I'm doing that, Wendell, we spoke about this earlier, but this isn't the first time Nvidia's done something like this. And certainly Intel as well has definitely been guilty of this. So do you want to kind of expand for people that may not know? I mean, most of us are aware of what happened in the European Union with Intel. But for those that don't know, do you maybe want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so your Intel is fighting a $1 billion fine from the results from actions in the early 2000s. And it was a very similar program, at least on paper. Don't know. But, there are some outward similarities looking at the Nvidia GPP program with the Intel partner program, and the European Union got the legal machinery out, and there's all kinds of wonderful depositions and documentation and things like that. And in the European Union, it sure does look like Intel was giving just bathtubs and bathtubs of cash to major retailers and companies like Dell and HP. Looks like, again, to carry or favor Intel processor placement. And this is at a time when, the Athlon X2 was a superior product from a technical standpoint. And so it could be argued that, it's the same situation going on with AMD and Nvidia in terms of is Nvidia starting to get competitive products, is AMD starting to get competitive products? Is Nvidia sort of anticipating a future where AMD has got some seriously competitive GPUs and they just want to sort of do everything they can to cement their position? I mean, it's already, in order to win the GPU game, you can't just have the superior hardware anymore. You also have to have the superior software stack. If you look at AMD GPUs in terms of like raw computations per second, the AMD GPUs have been on top for a long time. I
Yeah.
mean, even Vega 64 is on top versus a 1080 just in terms of raw computations per second. But that's not everything. You have to have optimizations and drivers and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that thousands of man years have gone into the driver stack. And also there's intellectual property and protected intellectual property in those driver stacks, a lot of special sauce, a lot of patents you got to be careful to dance around. And all of those things have sort of come to work against AMD in this ecosystem. But having the superior compute capability, you're just one software patch away from being on top in the leaderboards and things like that. And so there may actually be more competition here than it appears to the consumer on the outside looking in, just in terms of the Vega architecture, and especially Navi that's coming up and that kind of thing. And especially if you look at what AMD or the Radeon Technologies Group is doing with Intel now as well. And so it's sort of interesting that the shoe is on the other foot, because Nvidia wants to cement its place there, not just for graphics cards, but we're also talking machine learning. Now is the heyday of the graphics company, because you got the self-driving cars and machine learning and cryptocurrencies, as well as gaming and everything else. And I got news for you. Nvidia having their best quarter ever doesn't really have much to do with gaming. It has to do with all those other applications that lots and lots of horsepower in a GPU gets you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was raised in the article in that basically Nvidia is really, how would I put this? They're inviting a lawsuit, or they're inviting investigation with the GPP. And I've spoken to some people behind the scenes, and they say that maybe this was the case with Intel, with what you were just talking about as well, with the rebate scandal, in that they see the potential profits to be made here outweigh how much they may have to pay in fines if they get investigated by a sort of commerce thing, or anti-monopoly thing, or anti-competitive, investigation. And so they just do it anyway, and they just let the lawsuits hit them, or let the investigations come in, and then they've made so much money. Is that something that you potentially, this is just speculation, guys, we're not saying this is what Nvidia is actually doing, but do you think that has the potential to be the case?
Well, it certainly was the case with the Intel thing in the European Union, because I mean, look, we're talking about the Athlon X2, which is ancient. I mean, we're talking, like 300 AD Roman villas and mosaics in computer years. And so that is still in the court system. It's been in the court system for over a decade. And even if something come of this, unless it was super clear cut, unless you've got an audio recording of is it Jensen saying yeah, we're gonna do this, and we're really hoping it cuts AMD off at the knees. It's not gonna be a clear cut legal case. It's gonna be in the court system for 10 years. So I would definitely say it's a calculated risk, and I would definitely say that like, if I were in their position as a billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, having to answer to shareholders, the chances of not doing this, the pressure to do this, would be enormous. You would almost have to, because you're kind of at a limit for market growth, and the collapse of the cryptocurrency market means that that's going to take your profit with it, because gaming PCs is not that much of a growth market. Gamers are not really spending $1,200 on a GPU on average. So where are you going to get all your profit? It's this new market for GPUs, and it's the new market for AI and everything else. But it's especially, cryptocurrency and all of the new markets beyond the old markets for gaming.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that caught my eye, and when I commented on the Hardware Unboxed video yesterday about this, some of you guys may have seen it. I said in this part that you can see on the screen now, I'll read it out for you guys. One thing we know is that Nvidia has made a lot of enemies over the years. You can easily put AMD, Apple, and Intel on that list. We think that GPP is somewhat the result of those feuds, with Nvidia attempting to gain more control over the market as it is seeing its competition developing products, i.e. AMD and Intel partnerships on products that will not be open to Nvidia. So to me, it almost felt like Nvidia kind of getting grumpy because they feel excluded in a lot of ways. And so they're like, look, we're going to do the GPP and we're going to bring all these brands together under our umbrella, more closer than we already have them, into this partnership that we can then dictate even, we have even more control over their brands. That's how I see it, as them just leveraging more control, because obviously they're a very big company, they have a lot of money in that, so they can throw their weight around. And that's something that, do you agree? Do you disagree with that, Wendell?
I heard a rumor. So there's something that's tangential to that, but maybe related, and I'll come back to it in a second. And I heard a rumor that one of the reasons for GPU prices being what they were is because that some crypto miners are competing, cryptocurrency companies, Chinese companies, are competing for fabrication time of the actual silicon. Wow. So we're not talking about people buying the GPUs for mining. We're talking about, like, TSMC and Nvidia, I think it's TSMC and Nvidia have a contract in place, or their silicon, it's like, you are guaranteed to produce at least this much, and we'll pay you for that fabrication time. And so there are some minimums that are sort of guaranteed to be in there in the contracts. Depending on how old the contracts are, the cryptocurrency craze may not have even been a feature in those contracts. But it seems like that, again, rumor, but it seems like that getting time for production on those fabs is just as detrimental, because those fabs are definitely being used, like the absolute top end process to produce ASICs for crypto mining, because they are more than willing to pay for it. I mean, the AIB partners, the direct, as long as they can get a supply of GPUs, are they going to have any trouble selling GPUs? No. Even at an inflated price? No. So a lot of the other stuff that normally goes in just doesn't matter. Yeah. And so, like, from a business perspective, the gamers just don't matter right now. Now, they matter in the sense that you want them to buy your stuff as soon as the cryptocurrency market collapses, or AI, or some of these other markets, but it's not just cryptocurrency and gamers. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in terms of people who are using GPUs to do stuff. There are a lot of companies that are buying GPUs to do their own machine learning experiments. I mean, it's like, let's outfit a 42U rack with a bunch of Titans. There are companies doing that because it's not really a huge expense, and they can start trying to do AI on their own without letting the secret sauce of whatever their company stuff is out into the cloud, or out into whatever. You've got it in for AI. You've got all the other companies doing that, and you see odd things happen, like Tesla hiring Jim Keller, and it's like, wait, and then now it makes sense. Like, now the public knows everything that those guys on the inside knew when Jim Keller jumped ship, but not really. And what about Raja Koduri? I mean, he kind of jumped ship, but not really. And so it's like, those guys knew something internally, and whether that's fab, or whether that's changing market, or whether that's whatever, I'm not sure. So this GPP may be an opportunity that Nvidia is trying to create for its partners that are effectively cut out from any of those other markets, because the AI and the cryptocurrency and things like that, you don't really need a board partner, not like Asus, or not like, to put the work into it. Game developers, like game companies, I think would be the most scared, because not from the board side of things, but from software development, because it is really, really hard to find good game programmers that know their stuff and can do a good job. And Nvidia has some of the best talent in the industry that's just, yes, you team of 30, go to this game studio and let's make it rain good driver code. And I don't think that AMD has that yet. They're working on it, and they're hiring people. But gosh darn it, they're the plucky little company that could, or at least Radeon Technologies Group. And so, maybe that's one of the reasons that the Raja jumped ship. I don't know, but it's easy to imagine that there's some component of that scenario just because Rogic's like, oh, I'm going to have access to all the engineering talent of Intel.
Mm.
But then you see some of the old school Intel people jumping ship too, and it's like, you know what's going on? You know, what do you make of that? Because Intel has its own fab, so Intel doesn't have to answer to anybody. But then, you know, it's a complicated, tangled web.
Yeah, so I mean, a few parallels people have been drawing. Um, the first one I want to mention, this is just one that I've just drawn. It's funny that I mean, it's called the GPP. And I saw Jared from Jared's Tech comment. He was saying, well, if no companies sign up, then the partnership doesn't mean anything. True. But that's also in the real life thing that's non-existent now. Well, it's sort of different. Was the TPP, and that there's pretty much the same approach countries took to that agreement in the sense of, oh, we have to get on board because we don't want to miss out, and that's how they sold it to a lot of people. And it seems like the board partners are going to pretty much have to do the same thing because they can't afford to miss out, so they're just going to sign up because they're just going to have to because you know they don't want to be left out by Nvidia and miss out on all these things that they're saying that these good benefits they're going to include, like the high effort engineering engagements and other things like that. They're just going to go with it because they can't afford to miss out on it, and that's what makes it kind of unfair. And the other parallel is the fact that a lot of people would, if you're not aware, well, maybe I'll let Wendell explain this. So Nvidia has their GameWorks, and that's it's not so much it benefited Nvidia cards as much as it hindered AMD cards. That's how I would put it. And so, well, you can explain. You're very aware of our GameWorks and all that. So explain sort of that controversy to do with that, which was, been going on for a while now.
GameWorks is this amazing thing where certain things that are hard to do inside a game, like hair, for example, animating hair. I mean, how are we going to animate hair? Think back to like you ever play like the old school Tomb Raider on like a PS1, and it's like Lara Croft's got the triangular chest going on, and it's like it really hasn't changed much from the triangular chest. It's just that the triangles have gotten a little smaller. And so things like hair are hard to do because hair is not made of triangles, you see.
Yeah.
And so Inner GameWorks and specifically Hairworks. And so with Hairworks, there's some stuff that Nvidia has done that only works on Nvidia hardware that has really good looking hair, and you can use that for things like grass and texture animation and all sorts of stuff. But there's it's not that Nvidia really invented the technology, but Nvidia has put a lot of special sauce into the driver to make it easy for game developers to use those facilities without having to really code it in the game. And then all of a sudden, some of the game engine is actually living in the driver. There's a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, haven't you ever wondered why your graphics driver is hundreds and hundreds of megabytes? It's because it has tiny pieces and parts of all the different popular games in it. And Nvidia will actually like runtime patch those games so that they run better in terms of like their graphics interface, because it's like, whoa, the developers are doing something dumb here. We're just going to ignore this request to redraw the frame every 300 times a second and make that something more reasonable. And sometimes Nvidia can work with the developer to do that. Sometimes it's fixed in driver land. And so GameWorks is a lot of that, but it's optimized specifically for Nvidia cards. And so if you're working with a game company, and then the game company builds all that stuff in their game, and then you build it and deploy it, your only real option if you want those features is to turn it off. And so AMD, some of the features in Vega, AMD added to their hardware. And so now you can run some of the stuff, or at least their driver provides some of the stuff, so that you can do some of the stuff and get it in the game. Kind of like GameWorks, but it's not a perfect solution, and Vega had other issues.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, to round out this sort of article, what does this mean? I mean, obviously you guys may not agree with all this, but what does this mean for you as consumers? I mean, I just don't see this being a good thing for consumers at the end of the day. I think there really needs to be just some separation between them. Like Nvidia's just trying to get too much control. I feel like they're an octopus, with the tentacles going out just too much now, with their legs, and it's, yeah. I don't see this being a good thing for consumers. What do you think, Wendell? Do you think it'd be good or bad for the end consumer?
I think that if it's implemented exactly as it is on paper and there's no ulterior motive from Nvidia, I think that it's perfectly fine. But I think the reality of human nature is that it's not going to be fine, and it is going to lead to a lot of the things that people think it will lead to. And the way to avoid that is to just do everything as openly and transparently as possible. Like, why couldn't we have a marketing event at Caesar's Palace, and it's like Nvidia in partnership with Asus present the blah 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 blah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the ROG, whatever. That seems fine. But then if it's like, oh, we can't, and it also, it's like we don't want any AMD products at the Nvidia plus ROG Caesar's Palace, whatever. That also seems like it's fine. But if I go to Asus's website and I see that we've got ROG AMD cards, I think that's good. If it's like, no, you can't do that, then I think that's bad. That's not good at all. Linus Tech Tips, he published, or he did a video on how many Amazon referrals they get, and one of the things that he mentioned was that the same graphics card with gamer and without gamer, the one that had like gaming or gamer in the title, even though it was the same card, sold almost 3 to 1 versus the non-gaming card. So the market is
Wow.
really dumb. Like people are dumb, and so it's like, oh, I want this card with this spec. No, it's like gamer whatever. It's like, yeah, gamer whatever sounds good. Let's just buy that.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely a thing out there, and I think, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say at this stage. This is still early days. I think you're exactly right, though. It definitely opens up the door for some things to happen behind the scenes, which may not be good for us end consumers if the whole transparency isn't, followed. But we will have to
Yeah.
see. I mean, yeah, we'll give Nvidia the benefit of the doubt. So we'll just have to see what happens with that. Now, the next thing we wanted to talk about was Zen Plus. So we have this article here from Guru 3D, which is benchmark showing probable 8-core Ryzen Zen Plus 12 nanometer at 4.35 gigahertz. So this has been something that a lot of us tech reviewers have been talking about in terms of what we wanted to see for Zen Plus, which isn't that far away now. If you don't know, that's Ryzen's the Ryzen 2000 series, put it that way. So
It's coming out next month,
yeah,
or
yeah,
so
right
they
around
tell
the
us,
corner.
or rumor has it, or whatever.
So the maximum, so as they point to in the article, the 1800X has a maximum turbo speed of 4.1 gigahertz with their XFR. Given that the new Ryzen Plus CPUs will be coming with XFR 2.0, this is basically showing that they will be going up to 4.35 gigahertz. Now, to be perfectly honest, I was hoping for higher. I was hoping something closer to maybe 4.5 gigahertz in terms of the XFR speed. So maybe with the 8 core, you'd have something like a 4.0 base, 4.5 turbo, or boost as they call it, or something along those lines. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with Wendell's cam. It is working. It's just kind of popping. It could be my internet, guys. I'm sorry. I still don't have particularly good internet, but it's just your cam's fine on your end, Wendell. It's just on the stream. It keeps like jumping up and down. It might be their
Why?
connection. Yeah, that's interesting. It seems to be. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Sorry, guys, about that. If that's going to be an issue for you, but you can still
Yay,
see and hear
streaming.
Wendell just fine. So I don't think it's a problem. It might just be my OBS acting up. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Anyways, we can carry on. I mean, you guys can still see and hear Wendell just fine, so it's okay. I might just try, maybe if I move this around a little bit in FPS. That might help. Let's try that. See if that's gonna solve it. Okay, I just reset it, and that might help. Nope, still bouncing around a little bit. Okay, no, it shouldn't be a problem. We'll carry on anyways, Wendell. So yeah, we were hoping for. Jared said it's a glitch in the matrix. I can't continue without Wendell looking flawless. I am sorry. He is a flawless man, isn't he? We'll yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. It's just one of those things. It's just streaming on YouTube sometimes. It's kind of wild. Yeah, the audio is still clear, so we can carry on. So we'll bring up another one of these benchmarks here. So yeah, Wendell, what were you hoping with Zen Plus then? What were the gains and improvements you were hoping to see?
I was kind of hoping for 4.5 gigahertz. Mainly, there's some weird performance glitches that happen, not unlike my stream, and it's mostly around like when you get really, really heavily saturated PCI Express connectivity, it seems to drop out prematurely. Like I have less bandwidth available than I would expect. But if you sit and you fiddle with the parameters, you can get the extra performance. And so like not all DDR4 3200 memory is created the same. So like if you run the memory benchmark and you fiddle with the settings, sometimes raising the timings will actually make it faster instead of lowering the timings. And I think that has to do with some weird interaction between the Zen cores and Infinity Fabric and RAM. And I think that AMD's probably worked out whatever that problem is by now, and it's probably okay. And I'm hoping that Infinity Fabric speed is decoupled from RAM speed, because I think that was probably a large part of people's issues. Because, I mean, I don't mind telling you, Infinity Fabric running a DDR4 3200, that was something to strive for a lot of different a lot of different sort of servery type workloads. It's also true that like testing GTA 5, we had lots of weird performance anomalies. Like it could not push the GTX 1080 Ti to the point of beyond 140 FPS. And I don't know why that was, because the horsepower was there. Like the CPU was idle. And so like even taking an 1800X and making it 4 cores so that it's all on one thing, the CPU horsepower was there, but it just couldn't push more than 140 FPS, and it's maybe down to bandwidth. I think Steve from Gamers Nexus had some benchmarks where going from 16x to 8x caused the graphics to suffer more on the AMD side of the equation than the Nvidia side of the equation. And I'm not sure why that would be. Like, as long as the bandwidth is there, what does it matter? But it was not using the bandwidth effectively on 8x versus 16x, even though it was not fully using the full 8x bandwidth. And so I'm hoping all those little teething issues are resolved. And if we get the clock speed, then that'll be great. But if we don't, if they resolve all of those issues, even if it runs at 4.35 gigahertz, it's going to be like it's running at 4.5 gigahertz, because Ryzen could have been even faster than it is now if those little efficiency things were improved.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I mean, we all have high hopes for this. I think many of you guys out there need to, how would I put this, temper your hype a little bit with Zen Plus, because I see a lot of people putting out huge sort of things that they think will, these huge gains in that. And from these benchmarks, if these are to be believed, obviously take them with a grain of salt, we're seeing more likely an incremental improvement over the Ryzen 1, Zen. So, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. I surely hope the clock speeds will be higher. I mean, we can hold our breath and hope. But, yeah, we'll just have to see where this goes. And, of course, we'll know we'll know more. Jared was saying the memory issues are a bit sad. He still can't OC his memory on his Threadripper system, despite all of it being QVL on the QVL list. So,
Jared, this is going to sound completely nuts. Reseat your processor. Take everything completely apart. Again, yeah, I know. It's annoying. And reseat your processor, but this time when you're tightening down the screws go in a different order than you did the first time that you were putting it together. Because as crazy as that sounds, that fixed one of my 128 gig DDR memory problems. Like everything was fine. 32 gig kit was fine. 64 gigs, like two sets. But take the CPU out, literally, and just look at it, and then just put it back together, and tighten the screws down. It is like instead of 3-2-1 do 3-1-2 because it's just the two on the opposite sides with the one in the corner.
Yeah.
And don't tighten one all the way down. Like tighten one a little bit, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then just keep doing that. And then my 128 gig problem was gone on the designator. So.
Oh yeah, he said he can't. This was something that I believe. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I believe I was the first one to make a video about it. The whole Foxconn versus LOT sockets, because he's running a Foxconn, so he was saying, "Oh, I can't do it," and I made a video talking about that, and everybody it got a real mixed reaction. And then when Jay made his video talking about that issue, then suddenly it gave me legitimacy. I don't know how. I guess people still disregard my opinions for some reason. But then when Jay says it, then it's gospel. So I basically pointed out the difference. There's actual differences between them, and that's the big issue that people were having. The boards, the X399s that came with the Foxconn sockets, they have the same screws as the LOT socket or Lotus socket, however you want to say it. The difference being is that the LOTS ones, the screws sit flush with the mount, whereas on the Foxconn they do not. So it means they're just the slightest bit short, and that's why you have to push down so hard with the Foxconn ones to get them to thread. They're just a nightmare. So that was one of my discoveries, and I made that in my X399 is a mess video, which I talked about the memory issues as well, which is a common thing, and a lot of people were having them. But moving on now from that, we have Inno3, this WCCF Tech article by Hassan, and it's Inno3D leak confirms Nvidia P102, 100 Pascal GP102 crypto mining cards, 3,200 cores, 5 gigabytes of GDDR5X memory, and up to 47 megahashes a second in Ethereum. So this is something people have been talking about for a while now. We thought it would be with their new cards, Volta or Ampere or whatever it's going to be, which will be out soon, guys. I don't know how much I can say. I don't know how much Wendell knows, but from whispers I've heard around the industry, you will not have to wait long for Nvidia's new GPUs. Is that the rumors you've been hearing? Things like that? Yeah,
that's what I've been hearing too.
Yeah, so we're not going to have to wait long now. And the idea being that Nvidia was going to be, the rumor being that Nvidia was going to be releasing 2 lines of graphics cards. They're going to have mining cards and gaming cards. And this was, I guess, their way of alleviating the GPU shortage we have now, which has been caused by lots of miners buying up their graphics cards. Not so much, I would say, people like you and me, even people building their own mining rig. It's more like companies that are getting into crypto, and they go and buy. And you guys think this is just, oh, Kevin, you don't know what trust me, guys. I've heard things around the industry. There's companies that will go in, talk to retailers and different people, and they will buy like 5,000 graphics cards, 10,000 graphics cards, 15,000 graphics cards. I'm not kidding. And I'm sure Wendell might have heard things like
Confirmed.
that too. Confirmed. And those are the people that are giving you the shortage. So picking on some guy that goes in and buys 5 GTX 1080 Ti's and you're, oh, why are you buying 5? Like, we can't afford them. It's, trust me, guys, that may be adding to it in a very slight way, but it's these companies and corporations buying them in like mass amounts. That's where the huge shortage is coming from. And so, as I said, Nvidia's way of dealing with this is to do these 2 different ones. But I didn't expect it to be on Pascal. So what do you make of this? Do you think this is correct? Do you think this would be a thing they would do? Because by all means, as far as I'm aware, Volta is very good for mining because, I mean, Titan V's put out huge numbers in terms of their mining speeds and what they benchmark when you mine with them. But of course, the Titan V costs an absolute fortune as well. I mean, it's $3,000, so not many people are going to buy it.
I have yet to lay hands on one of those. Those are just
same with me.
probably
I've never tested one. I haven't even laid my hands on one. So what do you make of this then?
I think that if they're moving to a new process, this could make a lot of sense from a process standpoint because if you come up with a new flagship card and then let's say they just move the 1080 Ti down a little bit and then that becomes your second tier card, then that can make a lot of sense and you can sort of run that with that, as long as the machinery that you've set up for the first process doesn't have anything to do with the machinery that you've set up for the second process.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's what's going on here. I would like to think maybe that's what it is because maybe they've got a new fabrication facility and they're just going to keep the old stuff online for a little bit longer and the mid-range cards are fine.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it'll be... I mean, it could be a good way for them going forward because the funny thing for me is that part of the reason why a lot of people would buy, but again, this could, as I was saying, it's mainly these big companies buying them up, so it may not fix it. But a lot of the reason why they bought the gaming graphics cards rather than buying things like an ASIC miner or something like that is for the fact that if crypto went down or it got, it collapsed, then they could turn around and sell the gaming graphics card to gamers and making these mining only ones, even if they're more optimized for it and they do it at higher hash rates and things like that, there might be people that are apprehensive because of that worry that, hey, if it collapses, I can't then on-sell this, and so they still might buy the gaming GPU even though it may get lower hash rates purely because of the resellability of them if there is some type of regulation or collapse. Would you agree with that?
It is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. That is very possible. I mean, some of the people that are buying graphics cards may be thinking, oh, I can always sell this for some fraction of what it's worth, down the road. But they wouldn't necessarily be able to do that with a cryptocurrency mining card. The explanation could be, that's the boiler snake. The boiler snake wants to say hello.
I was wondering what that is. So what is it?
It's the heat is steam. It's steam heat, and sometimes when there's moisture in the pipes, the steam hits the cooler moisture, and so it compresses really quickly, and it just makes a popping sound. It's just, It's 115-year-old technology, 115-year-old radiator. So things have sagged a bit.
It's funny. They in the chat thought it was my cat Frank trying to get out in the background. That's very funny. But yeah.
But so I think there's another possible explanation, and that is maybe the next gen GPUs don't use GDDR5, maybe they use HBM. Yeah. And so Nvidia is like, well, we can just keep the lines running with the GDDR5 thing, because HBM versus GDDR5, as we've seen with Vega, doesn't really make much of a difference from a mining perspective, and those cards are definitely going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
So it seems like that even not even with GDDR5 being a current technology anymore, maybe that would be good enough for miners.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this one, as you guys are looking at the specs on the screen, I mean, you can see a lot of these specs, you'll notice, are very similar to the 1080 Ti in some ways. But you can see the big difference there being that the physical memory only being 5 gigabytes, obviously that's a big difference. It shares the GDDR5X. It has the high clock speed of 11 gigabits per second on the memory. CUDA cores wise, it's around the same as well. A bit less though. So this is an interesting way to go for Nvidia, and this may be what they're doing. We have also heard murmurings around the industry of what their new GPUs, their 2000 series, or as far as I know, it's going to be called the GT 2080. A lot of people saying it's going to be called the 1180 from everything I've heard is going to be the 2080 is what it's going to be called, their next flagship. And the thing right now has been, will it be running HBM2 or GDDR5 6? And GDDR6, I should say. Getting myself confused. So, is there anything you've heard? Because I've asked around the industry about this, people behind the scenes, and I'm hearing it's HBM2 that they're going for. Have you heard similar, or are you hearing they're going towards GDDR6?
I haven't really heard anything. I wouldn't be surprised if the flagship product has HBM, but then the sort of the mainstream high end product is GDDR6.
Okay.
And I would expect all of like from like the 1050 Ti up through like maybe the 1070 equivalent. I would expect all those to be GDDR6. But then like the 1080, 10 and whatever will become the 1080 Ti, maybe for those to have HBM.
Yeah. I think that'll probably be. I mean, we saw it with our current series, the 1000 series, in terms of GDDR5 on the entire lineup, except for 1080 and 1080 Ti, and if you're counting the Titans as well. But let's just say for the mainstream ones, that was the memory type. So I think that's pretty fair. Potentially, I mean, it could be GDDR5X, couldn't it? On the lineup up to the 1070 equivalent, and maybe something like that. But we'll have to see.
That's possible, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine.
Well,
I imagine it could be that. And I also think of the fact that you said HBM2 will mean that the price will go up, which is going to really.
Yeah, they can't make enough HBM. I mean, Intel's using it now too, so it's just like, what are we, how are we going to deal with this? But GDDR5, I mean, 11 gigabits per second on the GDDR5 side of things is pretty good.
Yeah.
Latency enters into it too. I would love to know so on the AI side of things, ARM and some other people have been working on a type of memory where the computation is done on the memory. Like the memory has some limited computational capabilities, so you don't have to load things from memory into the CPU and then back out to memory again. You can do some of the computation literally just in memory, and because the line between memory and processor is blurred. And so I could see something like that with parallel stream processors and all that sort of thing. I could see that being hugely valuable in the GPU market, but it would require a totally new GPU architecture and probably a new driver model.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that would work from a hardware standpoint. But if neither AMD nor Nvidia is researching that seems like something they should get on, because being able to manipulate things directly in memory will be the next big leap in GPU technology.
Yeah. No, so I think it's going to be. We should know soon. I'll put it that way. Soon-ish. What's going to be going on with Nvidia, and I think everyone's excited because it's been a long time since Nvidia's put out something new for mainstream people that's not like a rehash of something else like the 1070 Ti. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking forward to it, and that's something that's not a Titan either. So I think a lot of people will look forward to it, and it should be interesting to see how it goes. So we're just going to round it out here, guys. I mean, if you guys have any questions you would like answered from Wendell or myself, let us know in the comments right now in chat. And also, guys, I did an interview with Wendell just before. We talked about some of his early life, some of his favorites YouTubers to watch, his favorite CPU and GPU. So if you guys are wanting to catch that interview video, that will be going up somewhat soon on the channel. I got a few other videos I'll get through and then I'll check it out, but maybe around this weekend, early next week, I'll be putting that video up. So if you want to catch that video as soon as it drops, make sure you have subscribe.
Lower your expectations.
No, raise your expectations. Raise them up. Wendell the wise. Wendell the very. OBS is disconnected. OBS is reconnected. Hold up. We look good on the stream, eh? We're still.
Oh, it hiccuped for a second. It's coming back now.
Why did it? Windows.
Are we back?
Are we back? Windows
is like
OBS disconnected. OBS Studio reconnected. Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's looking like it's... Yeah, I'm just having a look now. Okay. Oh, it's just being silly. Ah, such a silly stream. So, yeah, as I was saying, the mining card. So I was doing my 290 reviews. I had put aside, I can't remember, it was like $2,000 or $3,000 my money to start the channel to buy cards and buy products through reviews, as you do when you start. And I needed a cheap graphics card for my personal rig, because I didn't have one. So some guy was selling and mining, X-mining R9 290, a reference one, you know, the hairdryer, the one that would run at like 95 degrees. I went, I bought it cheap. I was like, whatever, you know, this thing's been thrashed, but, you know, most reliable graphics card I ever had. Never had a problem. It ran mint the whole time. Never a single hiccup. The funny thing was, I switched to a top model of R9 290, the Sapphire Vapor X, and then that had, after about 6 months, that started having a few hiccups. So that was a bit stream. That was a bit weird. Yeah, everyone's saying the streams are all up and good now. All right, guys. So questions. Why is OBS... Oh, sorry, dude. The stream keeps crashing, coming back on. What the hell's going on? You did so good for so long. Did it hiccup again? Oh, it's just hiccuping. Sorry, guys. My Windows is screwing up. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I thought we'd ask a few more questions, but yeah, Wendell said he never had the lemon pepper chicken wings. I'm sorry, my Windows 10 must be just having a hernia. It's never done this before, but
there's a local place that makes dry rub, like this dry rub stuff that they do to wings, and it's like a hot air oven.
Yeah.
Frying baking process. That's really good. It's a really good way to do wings.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well, we do live in Kentucky, so you'd imagine they do pretty good chicken there. That's pretty good.
The Colonel.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know what was going through his mind. So let's think about that for a second. The Colonel was like, you know, everybody likes fried chicken, but it takes too long to fry chicken. I need some way to fry it faster. And then he's like, I know, let's put boiling oil inside a pressure cooker and cook the chicken under intense pressure. Like flammable oil over high heat.
Yeah.
Like, who thought that was a good idea?
I know, right? I mean, it worked out in the end. So yeah, a few people laughing in the chat. They're saying Nvidia's trying to nuke the stream.
Take them down.
They said this is a taste of what happens after net neutrality is killed. Well, it doesn't affect me, guys. I'm in New Zealand, so we don't have to worry about that over here. The stream's being run on Kevin's Sapphire 290. No, guys. I run a MSI Gaming X GTX 1080 Ti now. Yeah, so that's really funny. Yeah.
That card is glorious. Like
it's fantastic.
That card,
yeah, it's great.
It's like I've got one of those. It's the 3 cooler one that has the ridiculous RGB fins and stuff.
Oh, the Trio. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, no, that's a crazy graphics card.
It's like 2 gigahertz. It's like you plug it in and it's like, let's overclock this and just dial everything all the way up, and it's like, yeah, it's cool, I got this. It's like, Jesus Christ, what did you guys do to this card?
Yeah, they've made some pretty good ones. I mean, some of the Strix GTX 1080 Ti was also a really nice one that I checked out. We had a question from Michael Mish. He said, Wendell, have you played with many WebKit 2 based browsers?
WebKit 2? I want to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure if it uses WebKit 2 or a fork of WebKit. So there's a package manager for Windows called Chocolatey, and you can install that, and then that makes it easy to install Chromium if you're on Windows. But there's several different people that maintain build scripts for Chromium on Linux that work with varying degrees of success, and that's the stuff that I like. But he may be talking about something else with the WebKit 2.
Okay. Yeah, and we had another question saying, what do they think the MSRP increase will be for the new Nvidia graphics cards? I would say on the mid-range stuff, you would see maybe 10%, but on the high end stuff, I see that I would imagine that's where we're going to see the big increase. The flagship, the 2080, that will be, I think, pretty expensive.
Yeah.
That'll be a lot. That's where you'll see the big increase. The mid range stuff will, I do believe it will go up, but it won't be that big. You know, it'll probably be enough to be noticeable, but not really that much to dissuade a lot of people. But things like the 2080, I believe, will actually be quite considerable enough that people will be like, oh, that's getting pretty pricey, Nvidia. I mean, that's what people. I remember back to when the 1080 launched, and people were saying that.
Yeah.
You probably did as well, Wendell. I mean, people were going on about it.
Yeah.
So everyone was going on
Yeah,
about how much the increase was over the 980.
Yeah, and it's going to happen again, except this time Nvidia's basically got a blank check. So,
Yeah.
brace yourselves because it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to go up quite a bit. Dio asks, at Wendell, do you think the Spectre/Meltdown bugs have been properly patched in Windows now?
No, I don't think so because even if the software side of it is correct, you're talking about a fairly significant loss of performance. Now, interestingly, the loss of performance on the AMD side seems to be, anecdotally, my testing workload, whatever, not much, very little. But Intel is fairly severely impacted. And I'm honestly surprised there hasn't been more press about that. I wonder if there's anybody out there doing any kind of quantitative and qualitative testing between, especially Threadripper and Epic, versus, like the i9 and the Xeon, because the workarounds in the Linux kernel for some of the Linux kernel workloads that I have to work, or the Linux server workloads that I have to work with, it's crippling. I mean, it's double-digit percentages of performance loss, and that's like regret. It's like we got new servers, and it's like we took out our new servers and put in the servers that we had before we had the new servers, and it's like that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, I mean, that was bad, eh? Like, and Intel sort of semi-covering it up as well, or at least trying to keep it quiet.
It's not that bad. Yeah, well, if they say how bad it is, then they're going to wipe out all of their profit for the next 3 years, and that's a lot. That's a large sum of money.
Yeah, exactly. So thank all you guys for watching. We're going to round out the stream now. It's been about an hour. I want to thank Wendell heaps for joining me here today, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Talking about all the different things we have. And as I said earlier, there will be a interview I did with Wendell going up soon, so make sure you're subscribed to Tech Showdown so you catch that interview as soon as it drops. I thank you guys for watching the stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.